Hi, everybody. You are about to start the first video with Carrie Allred from Rural Utah Child Development. She's the executive director, and she's going to be talking about really trying to bring in a lot of tools to solve a lot of the issues that they were running into around data, to make data more available. But how there's a lot more that goes into that than people necessarily think, and how starting with what people need to know and how they can answer questions with that data is an important part of the puzzle before you get into any of the technical solutions.
My name's Carrie Allred. I'm the executive director of RUCD Head Start, and we're located in southeastern Utah. Our service area is very large. It's 17,000 square miles. It goes from the top of Utah to the bottom and into the center. And I've been here for almost 9 years. And the funded enrollment, we have 110 early Head Start, 8 of which are in a center-based option, and 246 in Head Start, all center-based. So when I began in Head Start as an executive director, it was my beginning of Head Start. I had not held any other position in the program. And in learning about Head Start, I really relied on content area experts, the management team, the coordination, and the line staff. And 9 years ago, data was not the driving force. Paper was the driving force. And so I would sit in the office and the mail would come in, and there would be packages from 6 different counties and 8 different centers and 85 different staff sending in what was data. We didn't call it data. We called it forms and paperwork. And we paid a lot of money in postage. And there was a lot of different people receiving that postage. It didn't all come to me. It didn't all actually get reported to me. So when I would find an issue, I would be shuffling through papers. And when I would have a question, it would take several different people to answer that question. And they couldn't answer the question without going into that stack of paper. So you can imagine efficiency was not prevalent. And you can also imagine that the 40-hour work week was not realistic. So as I matured in Head Start, I started to realize that I was monitoring a lot of different areas, and they were all a la carte in my head. So there was no systematic monitoring. It was me remembering and reminding. That was my system. So I would remember something and then remind the manager. And it was a lot of questions. I say questions, they may call it nagging. But the problem with the remind system is that you don't remember during the hours of 8 to 4 during the day. You remember at 6 in the morning, 2 in the morning, 7 o'clock at night. You remember on the 4th of July, you remember on Christmas Eve, or at 10 o'clock at night, you're like, wait a minute, I haven't seen that paper for a while. Because the problem with paper coming in is you don't know what's not coming in. So you can't see negative data, as it were, because you don't know what you're missing, because there was no centralized location. So that was a pain point. So one day I took the biggest whiteboard I could find and I wrote down everything I monitored in each content area. And I brought the management team in and I wanted them to look at it because A, I wanted them to feel bad for me. And B, I wanted them to appreciate why I was the way I was. Why was I texting them at all hours? Why was I asking the question and then a second question and then a follow-up question? And then the next week saying, did we answer that question? And so when I laid it all out, I thought, no wonder my mind is tired, because that's been my mind's job. And I had probably been doing that for about 3 or 4 years at the time. And the next step that I thought was I should take the reports that we have on paper and make a data wall. So after I made the whiteboard list and knew what I was actually looking at, I thought, even as I'm writing the list, I would think, ooh, I haven't looked at that in a while. So I would take the reports and I literally took a physical room that we weren't using and I pasted all the data on the walls, and I invited policy council members in, management team, and the board of directors to wander around the walls. And it was so interesting because we would see ouch reports on one wall and class scores beside it, and teacher turnover another. And there started to be these like invisible threads between these pieces of paper on the wall. And I started to think, I didn't know the word correlation at the time. I started to think there is a thread in between this wall and this wall, but what is it? And I couldn't figure it out. So after all of the content area lists were made on the whiteboard and I brought the management team in to look at the lists, one of the really interesting things that we noticed was they weren't even necessarily collecting the data that was on that list. And it explained why sometimes the answer to my question was, I'm not sure. And when I realized that, I thought, every time I ask for this data and they say, I'm not sure, not only do I not get the answer, but I'm also not ensuring that they are monitoring their content area. And now I am taking the responsibility for this content area as the executive director. And it is not sustainable. It was not sustainable. It is not sustainable to be constantly reminding outside of your own lane. When the management team saw the lists and how they were collecting and not collecting that data, it started the conversation about what data was missing instead of how they weren't doing their job. Because I never meant the question to be about the quality of their job. I meant the question to be about the data. But it's really, really hard as a director and a leader to be talking about data without somebody taking it personally. But it's amazing when you have data in front of you, how easy it is to talk about the data and the person not take it in a way that is about themselves. That really was the unsustainable portion.